Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
I'm always doing these things. What do you do for me? That is why I'm confused. You have done nothing to make me feel seduced or special or anything. Make me feel like something, Jackie.
I don't make you feel like nothing, so why the fuck are you still with me if I didn't make you feel like nothing?
Because I see you as a project and I saw potential. I thought that you were just gonna come around to me as
A project. A project. A project. Now, they're in the midst of a fight, so maybe he's escalated and he's saying exaggeratory words. It didn't sound like that, though, right? I see you as a project. Is he trying to hurt her feelings? A project. Meaning that you're like a broken human being that I'm going to fix. So, it sounded like that, right? I don't know, reading into it. I've been hypothesizing, or not hypothesizing, I've been throwing out there that up until now, anyway, there was no indication that there was an overfunctioner or underfunctioner. No clear indication, and no indication of codependency and of an underfunctioner. And remember, codependency is not being mutually dependent. It could be that in a sense, but really the construct is an individual who needs to have someone under them, not necessarily controlling them, but someone who isn't functioning as well. The classic example of where the word comes from is someone who suffers from addiction, alcoholism. So the person is having a lot of negative consequences from chronic drinking every day, all day long. They have lost their job, or they have a lot of health problems. They'll have a lot of emotional problems, outbursts. They pee their pants because they get too drunk, this kind of thing. And the overfunctioner, the codependent person, fits well with this person because they feel as though their role in life is to help someone else with an ongoing problem that never goes away. Now, on the surface, the codependent person might be trying verbally to get the underfunctioner to change, to be more functional, but deep down, the codependent person actually needs an underfunctioner in order to validate their existence. It's usually a result of parentification or other kinds of issues when they were growing up. The codependent person, depending on the degree of codependency, can actually have a lot of anxiety unless they are actually taking care of someone else. It distracts them. It gives them a person, a project to work on so they don't have to think about themselves. It gives them energy to point to so that they don't have time to think about their own needs because they actually believe they'll never be able to meet their own needs because no one ever cares about their needs because that was their track record growing up. And so they will often have relationships. They will sniff the people out or even see overt signs of partners that would be a project, would be like a classic example is you have a therapist type person who has a lot of partners who have mental illnesses, depression, suicidality, this sort of thing. And the codependent person will often look very healthy. They'll often look, by comparison, very well adjusted, but they're actually not. They're only well adjusted when there's another person that they're taking care of. That's the only stable place they could be, but they need that person to be there. They can't handle it if that person actually becomes competent. They will need to find someone else to actually take care of. There are three types, and listen to my deep dive on codependent, what I'm calling codependent personality disorder. It's not in the DSM, but it could be conceptualized as a personality disorder. Anyway, there are three types, and I developed these three types in reviewing all the codependent people that I've worked with in my office. I've worked with a lot of codependent people and a lot of overfunctioners. And the three types are, you have the classic controlling type. So this is someone that is to some degree controlling, and it could be abusive. So an example would be that you have a parent that's codependent on, say, a 23-year-old under-functioning child, and the parent is micromanaging, the parent is saying things like, you shouldn't take that job. Any movement towards independence, the codependent parent is saying, like, you're never going to be able to achieve that. You should just, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And the underfunctioner maybe is influenced by another person to start getting their own mail, paying their own bills, doing their own things. And the controlling person will be like, you don't want to hang out with that person. Who is that person? Let me know who that person is. And then calls up that other person like, are you hanging out with my child? Like, what are you doing? Are you up to no good? And then just, it's controlling, it's enmeshed, it's invasive. Okay, that's a classic controlling type. The second type, which is harder to notice, but very strongly codependent, is these people are accommodating. So these people are very doting. They're not controlling per se. You could argue it is still in the end controlling, but it's not overtly controlling and it's not hostile. It is picking up around the underfunctioner. It's, what do you need? How can I help you? Let me do everything for you so you don't have to do it. Let me do your laundry. Let me pay your bills. If it's a partner, it would be along those lines as well. It's just like, how can I make you happy? How can I make sure that you are not impacted by your underfunctioning? And this is an accommodating codependent. So this person is very different from the controlling, but the essence is the same. It comes from the same place. They believe that their only self-worth and the only form of stable relationship is when there is an underfunctioner, and it distracts them from their own lack of connection with the self, their own low self-esteem. There's a third type, which is rare. It's what I call a chameleon type, where the codependent person will become like the underfunctioner. So they might abuse drugs like the underfunctioner, or they might become mentally ill, a psychogenic mental illness, to be like that person. Because if they join, then they justify the underfunctioner, right? It's rare and it's harder to detect that as well. But so for him, he had at least some potential yellow flags of the accommodating codependent person. The person who is very kind and let me do that for you, let me take care of you, that kind of thing. So when we saw that behavior, I was wanting to assume that it wasn't codependency, because why would I pathologize or label something that was functional? Because it was very functional, but I was worried that it wasn't mutual. And we saw some signs at she was able to take care of him. It was brief, but it was there. So I was encouraged by that. But then when I hear this, it looks more in the camp of codependency, where he sees her as a project. And right from the beginning, this isn't like 10 years into the relationship, it's right through, maybe even in the pods, that he noticed her fragility maybe, or her triggers, or her traumas, or her stress, or the circumstances of her life. And consciously what he would say maybe is, I want to help her. I have a lot of love to give. I have a lot of support to give. And I feel like I could actually help her. But unconsciously, he needs an underfunctioner, and he needs the underfunctioner to stay underfunctioning. And he will feel, often codependent people will feel like they're martyrs. They will feel like they have sacrificed so much, and they will use that as a guilt trip to the underfunctioner. Look at all the things that I do for you, and how dare you do this to me? It's nuanced, but I don't know. But to hear him say project, that's, it says something, doesn't it?
I'm always doing these things. What do you do for me? That is why I'm confused.
And people who are on the healthier side of codependency are able to say things like that. So I'm wondering if he's more on the healthy side, because for people on the healthy side of codependency, they will notice that they have needs that, because they're always overfunctioning, and at some point they're like, well, this isn't reciprocal. Part of it is because they've designed it that way, or they've chose a partner along those lines, or codependent people rarely will exhibit vulnerability to evoke people taking care of them. And Marshall is in that category. We don't know. We've only seen a small sample of his behavior, but she has certainly exhibited way more emotionality, way more vulnerability, way more chaos and difficulty and stress than he has. Now, maybe it's just a good time in his life right now. I just can't know. I would have to assess people in therapy to know the answer, or to zero in on a conceptualization of the answer to these questions. But so codependent people will have a chronic feeling, whether they register it or not, that they are being ignored, that no one is taking care of them. Now, for the more pathological codependent people, even though it's true that no one is taking care of them, it's their own fault, because they don't alert anyone. And so say the underfunctioner even tries to take care of the codependent person, the more pathological codependent people will say, no, I got it, I'm okay, don't worry about it, because they're completely uncomfortable with that reversal of roles, which is more in a more functioning relationship. I was hoping it was that. I was hoping this was a functional relationship where she was just going through a tough time, and eventually she would take care of him, and and we're not in a rigid pathological configuration. But the chronic feeling of having your needs not being met, if you notice it and you can say it, because what I am often doing with codependent people is trying to get them to acknowledge this, at least to themselves. I wouldn't want them to yell at their partner about it, but I would want them to acknowledge, like, yeah, my needs are not being met. Because when I talk to the more pathological codependent people, they'll say, like, I'm fine. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm okay. Why do you ask? But they're not fine. And deep down, they've chronically, maybe their entire life, never had their needs met. And when they were young, they were bidding. They were like, my needs, please take care of me. But they were always shut down, and eventually they just shut it off. And as an adult, they aren't aware of it, or they've given up completely, or they feel like that's not where their self-worth is. You start taking care of a codependent person, they start freaking out. They're just like, what's happening? They worry because if they open their heart up, because there's a part of them that wants to, they will be shut down again like they were when they were younger. So for Marshall, I don't know, but the fact that he's saying, where's the reciprocation? If he is on the codependent spectrum, indicates that he is less problematic, less pathological, less severe. It doesn't mean that it's not a problem, but I think it means that.
You have done nothing to make me feel seduced or special or anything. Make me feel like something, Jackie.
I don't make you feel like nothing, so why the fuck are you still with me if I didn't make you feel like nothing?
Because I see you as a project and I saw potential. I thought that you were just gonna come around to me as...
Yeah, I forgot about that second phrase. I saw potential. That is something that... Now, there's a world in which he's saying, no. Let's say in a world I assess him and he indicates there's no pattern of codependency. And, it's possible that you would have someone that would say, like, well, yeah, I really, really fell in love with her in the pods and afterwards. And there's a lot of issues there. She's got a lot of triggers. And I had hope that we'd be able to work on that and see our way through that. I know couples like that. I know couples who are like that, where there's not a codependency dynamic and one person has more problems. Maybe it's medical problems, maybe it's emotional problems, trauma problems, financial problems. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'd like to help that person and it doesn't interfere with our relationship. But the fact that you use the word project, that I don't know what he means by that, but it doesn't sound like, it sounds like maybe even he's been in these shoes before, where he's heard that or thought that, I'm going to transform you, I'm going to change you. And the codependent person, that's their conscious thought often. So the classic example is you have the person with chronic alcoholism, and the codependent person is hovering over, accommodating, making up, enabling, all this stuff. And if you ask them consciously, they're like, well, yeah, I'm doing all this, I'm picking up after them, I'm making excuses for them, I'm trying to make them in a good mood, and I'm putting myself in the back burner because I believe that eventually my partner will get sober and then everything will be fine. That's the conscious thought. But sometimes that is all that we want to say about it. But sometimes behind the scenes in the codependent person's personality is actually a desperation to keep it this way. And they will do subtle things either to pick someone that's an underfunctioner or to keep the underfunctioner underfunctioning. A classic example, and this is why the label codependency emerged in the first place, was that when they, in the 50s and 60s, and took the person with alcoholism out of the family and they went into rehab and got them sober and they recovered, they would go back home and instantly, within a short amount of time, would start using again. And so then they would pull them out and they would put them through recovery, and then they'd get sober and their head was right. They'd go back to the home, they start using it. They're like, wait, maybe we need to bring in the family. So you had the dependent person, the person who was dependent on alcohol. That's the language back then. And you had the codependent, the co-pilot to the dependency. And what they found was, not all the time, but some of the time, the partner often, or a parent or something, was entwined within the chemical dependency, and the behaviors and the traumas, they wouldn't have worded it this way, but the traumas resulted in the codependent person inadvertently actually create. So a classic example of this is the person with alcoholism is removed from the home, goes to rehab, maybe it's a few months, goes back to the home, and then the codependent person at first consciously is just like, yay, because it is a good thing, right? It's like, oh, my partner is now sober, is more healthy, their personality is back, they're functional, I don't have to pick up after them anymore. But over time, the codependent person starts to have anxiety. Does this person need me? That's another important thing that I haven't emphasized yet, and probably the central thing, is that a codependent person, everyone wants closeness. Everyone wants security in relationship. A codependent person does not believe that they can have a relationship with someone unless the underfunctioner needs them, right? So they believe that if I meet someone that doesn't need me to fix their life, why would they love me? Because I'm not a lovable person. So depending on the level of pathology of the personality. But for the codependent person, they're like, well, yeah, it sucks to have to put myself on the back burner, but at least I know that the underfunctioner will never leave me because they need me too much. There's no way they're going to leave me because they wouldn't function without me. And I know that, and they know that. And so this relationship is secure. So, that's another major pillar that holds up codependency, Anyway, so for the codependent person, the person with alcoholism is now recovered, is sober, doing well, maybe in therapy. And at first, the codependent person is like, yay. But then over time, there's this anxiety. Is my partner going to leave me? Do they actually love me? Have they ever loved me? If they don't need me and their life is going well and only getting better, they're going to have other options. Are they going to leave me? No one's going to love me just because of me. Who am I? Now that I don't have that distraction anymore, I don't even know who I am. I've never been out of those shoes of taking care of someone else. So I don't even know who I am. I don't like that feeling. So, and this is maybe subconscious, maybe a little bit conscious. And then the codependent person will go to the recovered alcoholic and say and this is common, the person that's recovering will have a stressful day at work and they've never dealt with stress sober. So they come home and they're a little excessively agitated, but it's part of the, no pain, no gain process. You got to go through the emotions. It's hard. And the partner, the recovered alcoholic, stresses like, oh my God, it's just so stressful. I'm just so angry about it. And the codependent person is like, well, geez, in the past you used to just drink and you would numb out, and at least it wasn't great you were drinking, but you were at least you weren't completely flipping out, And so the codependent person might say, well, at the recovery center, did they say you can't drink at all? Because maybe you could just have a beer and it'll calm you down. Maybe just one beer. Or I liked you a lot better when you were drinking. Maybe there's a fight and the codependent person says, boy, sometimes I wish you would start drinking again, because at the very least then you were not yelling at me all the time and not stressed out all the time. There's a lot of things you can say when the escalation of conflict happens after recovery. Why would the codependent person say that, right? It's too tempting to the person who is in their early fragile recovery, right? And so that's why there's 1,000 other examples I would give. But so that's codependency. And these individuals might even consciously say, this person is a project. I don't know what he means by that. It could mean a lot of things. It could mean something positive. It could mean something codependent, but we'll just add that to the hypotheses.
Are you still with me if I didn't make you feel like nothing?
Because I see you as a project and I saw potential. I thought that you were just gonna come around to me at some point. I was waiting around for that.
That's really wild. I'm a project.
I saw you as a project.
Okay.
You have not been in a real relationship before. You also say that you're not emotionally available at times.
It all still stands. It's pretty insulting to use the word project. She's taking it that way. I think it sounds like it. It'd be hard to imagine she wouldn't. So either he's oblivious to the connotation of that word. I can't imagine him being oblivious to the connotation of the word. I mean, there's so many other words he could have used. He could have said, I'm with you because I believe in our relationship, and I also know that you have some issues, which I feel very bad about that you went through that, and I really want to help you with that. That's a different phrasing, right, than saying, because I saw you as a project. Yeah. Now, he's hurt. They're both hurt and scared. There's a lot of hurt. You got to imagine. I mean, just think about for yourself the last time you were in a real whiz-bang of a fight with your partner, and just how hurt you are and how demoralized and negative you are. And you might say things that are not really what you believe. So codependent people often will not exhibit the hurt that they're going through for the reasons I was saying earlier. So maybe he's really, 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 really hurt. More hurt than she is. And he is lashing out from that hurt. And if, in a few days after he's able to calm down, maybe he will say, I don't know why I said the word project. That's a pretty dumb word. It's a pretty awful word. What I meant to say was something, I don't know, but it's a pretty awful word. And I'm guessing is going to cut to the core for Jackie, because I don't know, but the way it seems, Jackie, I don't know, it's just a hypothesis, but she has a lot. I'm thinking she's been through a lot, and she has a lot of shame about it. And for him, especially given the way that he comes across, because they would sort of indicate those differences, maybe in their background, maybe in the way they come across to people. I think particularly from him to say that to her, I think that could really cut to the core, and I think he knows that. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.